Now, what is another simplified version of this? Just to give you a few more integers about this. When your stomach is upset in the morning and someone comes at you with that craziness, you actually have less patience for all of that, right? Your stomach growling and grumbling makes you a growling and a grumbly person because the elements that are actually inside of your stomach are causing your body to actually overheat. And then the hotness is the anger. The anger brings in the temperament through resonance, and here you go. That's the whole of magic. And as I explained it before, I just want to make sure we build this into this session because I only said it once and it needs to be said again. The magic books that are out right now don't work, or they wouldn't be out. Therefore, another system that is on another parallel that is no longer how we operate. Now, all of that you're seeing in the magical book that they're telling you to do physically, this age does it inside of its mind. So you can do a ritual inside of your mind. You don't need to go and draw no circle out nowhere. And that's why even now they're getting a little bit farther with this visualization thing, because now there's the pole now is the mind is the womb. So everything that you want to accomplish in your healing practice, everything that you want to accomplish as far as a miracle can actually take place on how you put together your consciousness. You can start feeling colors. You can start smelling things that are not there and bring in those elements and essences, and all that can be done from the mind, right? So just so that's very clear, is just remembering the old system don't work. That's why there's so many of those books in publication, because they want you trying to work with a system that doesn't even function like that anymore.
The following clip is exclusive content from the university. Access over 300 videos and 26 courses with advanced metaphysics on demand. Jump in live chats with Savan and the rest of the tribe. New materials are available monthly along with guides and regimens. Subscribe today and save $25 off your first month membership. Links are in the descriptions. Subscribe to Secret Energy TV or this channel for future show notifications. Wholeness.
You see how we kind of are? It's like we'd be over here trying to figure out like where our origins are and how we, just even in the context of the questions, like great Kemet. And, you know, I love the Kemet stories. I love to dive into them. But my which is math, tells us that we all came from the same place. So what I meant by the corruption is when everybody be trying to jump on and act like the place only belongs to a certain group of people or something, because that's not what my says. And then if you want to really exhaust that, like how did it all happen and how did it all play out over the last 4,000 years where we all start looking different, you can read that easier through the language. That's why it says words that speak of the past, because then what you realize is they weren't calling themselves Kemetans. They weren't calling themselves Polish. They weren't calling themselves, and that's how we've lost the trail, because we don't realize what the original people were calling themselves. So, and then being able to look at an old enough map where you could see the area that they were in, you'd be like, yo, that's Russia right there. Wait a minute. I thought Russia was like not tropical. And then you look at some of the logs from the East Indian Company and realize that almost 20% of the pineapples were coming from Russia. That Russia was basically hot at some point and was even like basically like a tropical country. And people asked me, a while ago, and I had to crack this gem about, so why the lands? Look, if you don't think that Russia became cold and was already tropical, that seems almost impossible to you, right? You'd be like, Russia couldn't have been tropical. This is like you not realizing that even the place that you're calling Kemet didn't look like a desert before. What happened? We talked about this. So again, just to prove this, the land that you're calling Kemet right now looked like a jungle before. Now it looks like a bunch of palm trees in a desert. Same thing in Russia. Russia was a tropical place. Now it looks like very cold, perpetual winter almost. What happened? The ancients say this happens based on how you treat the woman. How you treat the woman in that area, the environment becomes. Now, after a pole shift where the woman becomes earth, because again, we got to check all our research, check all what we know already. We know the pole shift happened, the woman became earth. Then what did they start doing? They veiled the woman. They dried up they veiled the woman. Basically, in the Eastern cultures, they veiled the woman. They dried her up. She could no longer just dance the Malaya, which is now basically twerking. She could never dance around the Hijaz and all the extra stuff that they was doing back then, the shaking and the moving. And as I explained, the divine feminine, the curves and all that, they stopped them from doing that. And when they stopped them from doing that, the whole place dried up, because basically you just dried up the water. So the actual organism, that's why we keep looking beyond ourselves. We keep looking beyond our cultures. We keep looking beyond what we're doing, and we're looking into this alien and we're not seeing ourselves. When we treat our women and we dry them up and we keep their abundance down and we try to hide them, everything turns into a desert. Bam. Now go over to Russia. Man, they treat the women cold, don't they? Anybody know anything about Russians and Russian women and how Russian men treat Russian women? It's cold, doc. So look at the weather. And then someone would be like, man, man, you stretching, you're reaching there. No. It's that, just like I explained in this earlier question, the temperaments of the human being are degrees, as the Masonry calls it, as any educational system measures in degrees. Your temperature and your degrees is based on how much of this energy you're taking in and how much of it you can handle. What is the energy? We just talked about before. Well, there's only energy, right? There's only energy and there's consciousness. These energies are these elementals. So how these elementals and these formulas are mixing themselves up together creates a temperament of the land. So if you wanted to do just like a simple macro version of a world in your space, obviously you start with your body. That's what the whole thing about like the food that you're eating, like knowing your pitta and your dosha. There's some stuff in the automations that talk about that. But basically like if you're like a hot being, like I'm a hot being, like I'm hot right now, like I been needed water. Let me get some water right now. Right? Like everybody that touched me is like, man, you're hot. And that's like, I got all this hot thing going on. So when I eat, I don't eat hot sauce. If I eat hot sauce, everybody's getting cussed out. Like I may go dark side on everybody. It could be that extreme because it's like I'm pushing hot in the hot. I need to be with a cucumber sometime or something that is cooling me down. So knowing that about yourself, like cashews, eggplants, this stuff sets me on fire. Like I literally, and you can use some of that, but if you don't know what you're doing, this is what we were crack jokes about. Somehow eggplant is on your plate all the time. When you don't know about your element and what you're supposed to be eating and what really triggers you off, somehow you're eating what triggers you off all the time and don't even know, it's like, it's really the hot sauce? Like, yeah, it's the hot sauce. It's like, man, I love hot sauce. Like, yeah, you can't eat hot sauce. So it's that. It's understanding how your temperament is changing your environment. Now, what is another simplified version of this? Just to give you a few more integers about this. When your stomach is upset in the morning and someone comes at you with that craziness, you actually have less patience for all of that, right? Your stomach growling and grumbling makes you a growling and a grumbly person because the elements that are actually inside of your stomach are causing your body to actually overheat. And then the hotness is the anger. The anger brings in the temperament through resonance, and here you go. That's the whole of magic. And as I explained it before, I just want to make sure we build this into this session because I only said it once and it needs to be said again. The magic books that are out right now don't work, or they wouldn't be out. Therefore, another system that is on another parallel that is no longer how we operate. Now, all of that you're seeing in the magical book that they're telling you to do physically, this age does it inside of its mind. So you can do a ritual inside of your mind. You don't need to go and draw no circle out nowhere. And that's why even now they're getting a little bit farther with this visualization thing, because now there's the pole now is the mind is the womb. So everything that you want to accomplish in your healing practice, everything that you want to accomplish as far as a miracle can actually take place on how you put together your consciousness. You can start feeling colors. You can start smelling things that are not there and bring in those elements and essences, and all that can be done from the mind, right? So just so that's very clear is just remember in the old system don't work. That's why there's so many of those books in publication, because they want you trying to work with a system that doesn't even function like that anymore. That was Agrippa's times. That was before the pole shift. That was really also in respect to that you work directly with the matter. So there was nothing to really write down. That's why there's not also any real books about what was going on over there. But there is something. And I guess that gets us into the next question here in a moment. This question is from a number 4, and they say, I'm getting banged up. I actually had to shorten some of these questions because they were like super long, and I was like, okay, let me simplify this. So in so many words, what they were saying is they're basically getting pretty banged up in these family encounters. What do they need to do next? Meaning that, hey, it's not, I'm trying to go back in, and each time it's becoming difficult in dealing with the family members. What do I do? Now, I already gave some pointers earlier about, so if you're no longer willing to run a home run and set up fiber optics within the family for the moment so that the communication network can be a lot better and everybody can rise higher to a collective frequency and harmonize the DNA. That's just not where they at. Then what you have to also realize is actually ask yourself the question, what is holding you back specifically? Because technically you need to kind of just vicariously play with yourself for a moment and imagine you had $1 million, and then ask yourself the question, would you still be there dealing with the family members? Right? And the reason why you're asking this question is just to determine if you're dealing with that situation only because there's nothing else to do, or you feel that you're not empowered to go and do something else, or is it really that you really want to work on these family members? Now, there's no space to answer that question right now, but I'm just saying that is the first thing you need to do to kind of figure out what direction are we going with this. Is it really that, I'm at the house, there's nothing really to do, I don't really want to go to another country, I don't want to get in another relationship, here's my mom, here's my uncle, here's my cousin, let's go at it. And it's just like, it's only because you're not seeing that there's other things that you can be doing that you're still over here playing around with them. Because 9 times out of 10, you've already given them the juice, and it's just now the process that they're going through. They need to digest this. Sometimes we feel like next morning we should see change, especially when they agree. I see what you're saying, baby. I get it, baby. I see what we're saying, baby. We want to preserve the energy. We want to remove the negative things. And he'd be like, you know what? She's really getting it. And then next day, no more than a few hours, here it goes again. It almost even makes it worse because now you're like, okay, I've tried everything. But at the end of the day, what you also realize is that when you're actually when you want people to do certain things, there's even strategies around that, right? Like, how you can show people the benefit of certain things and they just kind of go into that because they start seeing the benefit. He's like, see, Mom, I'm now doing better on my diet. You see my waist? You see I'm even getting tuned up over here. You're like, ooh, baby, let me start. You see what I mean? So there's a whole nother route. So I would always suggest that you don't always come in with the Bushido blade or Thor's hammer, smacking down the whole situation about what you've just learned from last night's Try Vibes and pissing everybody off. And try a different approach, right? And see if that's why you're agitating the situation. And then ultimately, because this came from a number 4, I will tell you, 4s don't really function well in environments that produce anxiety. I know that would be crazy to say because some people would be like, well, nobody can. 8s can. There are actually paths that they get into the anxiety, like they function well in that. And now that sounds crazy to you, you're obviously on that other side where you can't function well in anxiety. But what I'm saying is that some people actually like dealing with issues, right? You ever met one of those people that they just like going in on problems? Let me solve it. And that same person also does not really like being in fields where there's too much harmony. It's boring to them. They feel like that there's nothing for them to do or to transform in those spaces. So again, as crazy as it may sound to you that some people like anxiety and can deal with it, and I don't know if they like it, but they can deal with it and they grow from it versus others cannot. You have to realize that. And from what we've been seeing with path number 4 as being a 4 myself is that we don't really function very well at top peak performance when there's anxiety going on. So with that being considered, I also mentioned here that, well, I actually meant to put in my notes is that just basically remember that because 4s have this sensitivity at times, especially if they're working on something, to not necessarily need to hear the criticism because they're already they know what the criticism already is and they're trying to fix that. This is like if you watch a designer creating something and you're kind of standing over their back and you're watching them, you're like, the font a little smaller. The picture's not put in the right place yet. And the designer turn around and be like, yo, man, this is a step-by-step process. Well, go sit down and I'm going to bring it to you when I'm done. So because they can't work with somebody trying to like literally interject at every single point. Let me finish this first. I already know the font is too big. I already know I need to dull out the background, but you're trying to tell me every single one. So 4s, they don't function in that kind of field too well. So that's also what can sometimes be created in the family environment. So as a number 4, how I mitigated this issue, basically decreased the level of agitation that I was creating in my life, because of course we want family to get along, is I started basically showing them the potential of being able to do this. And as time went on, and as the illusion keeps crumbling, more and more I'm hearing from family members in an accord where they want to keep now growing and getting involved versus arguing. So less challenge, more assistance. So just, utilize that advice in relation to dealing with the family. It seems like we always have a question about the family. So I'm never going to stop answering these questions, I realize, even if I program Intercom to do it for me. So every time I come in, we're going to have to deal with this. And that just shows where our hearts are, to be honest, because nobody's trying to just drive off without all the family members. Well, at least not a few of them. Anyway, so next thing. No, I'm joking.